Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri, wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amin ya rabbal alameen. So I think it's up on full screen today. So we begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We seek His blessings and we seek His forgiveness. And we send peace and blessings upon His beloved Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and upon His family, and upon His companions, and upon all those who follow Him until the day of judgment. Allahumma ja'alna minhum, may Allah make us amongst them. Ameen ya rabbal alameen. So inshallah today we're going to be discussing some verses from Surah Furqan, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes a very specific and unique group of people who Allah calls Ibad al-Rahman, the slaves of Ar-Rahman. And so there's a bunch of different characteristics, inshallah, which we'll go through. And the reason why this discussion is important is because this is one of the passages in the Quran that give us a very comprehensive approach to our daily lives, right? A lot of times the Quran will talk about our belief in Allah, it'll mention stories of previous prophets, and all of those things are extremely beneficial. But this passage in particular also speaks about some of the things that you and I can do on a daily basis, some of the things that you and I will be involved with in our day-to-day lives. So it really provides like the worldview and the perspective that we approach our lives on a daily basis, which is why this passage is so important. So first, who are the slaves of Ar-Rahman, and what exactly makes them so special? So really, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, is the servants of Ar-Rahman are the ones that embody specific characteristics. Right? And there's about 10 characteristics that are mentioned, and this is at the very end of Surah Furqan if you're looking to follow along on your phone, but I'll be pushing the verses on the screen as well, along with the translation. But this is from verse number 63 in Surah Furqan. And in this passage, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing several different characteristics, several different traits, ways that these people who are considered Ibad al-Rahman interact with other people, the way they interact with Allah. And so for the people who are practicing these qualities, for the people that are striving towards these different traits, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will explain a very specific and a very beautiful reward for these people. And that'll come at the very end of the passage, inshallah. So we'll try to get through as many of the characteristics as we can. Like I said, there's about 10 of them. And so and then at the very end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the reward. So we'll move forward, inshallah. So this first one, and the passage begins. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And the translation is given there, the servants of Ar-Rahman are those who walk humbly on the earth. Okay? So this is the first characteristic which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. And from it we learn so many valuable lessons, right? When these verses were first being described to me, one of the first questions that came up was, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, He mentions that the servants of Ar-Rahman are the ones that walk on the earth in a humble way. Notice how Allah does not say that they're humble, right? Which seems like that could capture all of the meaning that we're looking for here, or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to say. Allah could have very, very easily said that the slaves of the Most Merciful are the ones that are humble. But He says something specific. He says that these are the ones that they walk on the earth humbly. Right? They walk on the earth gently. They walk on the earth humbly. Why does Allah mention specifically that this has to do with their walk? It's because walking is something that is so like natural to us. We don't think about it. It's not when we walk, we don't have to actually put any mental effort towards that. You don't tell yourself that you're going to walk with your right foot, and then your left foot, and then your right foot, and then your left foot. It just happens naturally. You don't have to think about it. It's something you just do. Just like that. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the slaves of the Most Merciful are the ones that they walk on the earth humbly, that means that they're thinking about their humility before Allah in everything that they do. Right? In every single thing that they do. From the most basic aspect, which is walking. Right? Now this means obviously that it translates into humility and humbleness in everything that they do. Right? It's not just that they walk, but then when they're speaking with people, they're no longer humble, and maybe they have pride. But this means that because even in the smallest thing, the most basic thing that exists within their life, which is just simply walking, even they take that very seriously. Right? So they really want to make sure that they are pleasing Allah in all aspects of their life. So the first thing, very simple but very profound, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that the slaves of the Most Merciful are the ones who they walk on the earth humbly, right? And this is a concept that comes up in other places in the Quran too, where in Surah Al-Isra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions, وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. It says, don't walk on the earth in an arrogant way. And that's really beautiful because sometimes you can even just look at a person just based on the way that they're walking, and you feel like they're walking around with some pride, or they're walking around with some sort of there's something weird about the way that they're walking. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is again reminding us, like, this is something that we should be keeping in mind in all aspects of our life. And one more thing on this before we move to the next characteristic is that this does not mean weakness, right? Sometimes you may encounter translation of this ayah that says that the servants of Ar-Rahman are the ones who walk on the earth weakly. And this is in a weak way. This is not a totally comprehensive answer. In fact, it's not befitting of the believer to walk in a weak manner, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us that the strong believer is better than the weak believer. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ himself, if you look at his descriptions and the traits of our Messenger ﷺ, who we're supposed to copy, right? He's described as having a very powerful walk. He's described as somebody who has always had a very fast pace. They describe, some of the descriptions and narrations say that it would be as if he was always walking downhill, because he'd be walking at such a fast pace. Right? So powerful, very, very energetic. That doesn't mean like that this ayah is not saying that we do it in a weak way. So humility and being humble doesn't necessarily mean weak. In fact, it doesn't mean weak. So this is very important. But again, this is the first characteristic, that they walk on the earth humbly. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا. So important. He says, and when the ignorant people address them, they respond with peace. They respond with peace. And this is one of the most quoted verses when the scholars, they talk about how to control anger in Islam. Like, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about controlling anger and about controlling our emotions? So there's a few things that we need to take into account for this ayah to truly understand what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. So I'll go piece by piece. First thing is this word that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses for the person who addresses them. He says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ, the ignorant person, right, is how it's translated. Jahil is literally somebody who is unable to control their emotions. Right? So the jahil person is not just somebody who doesn't have knowledge, but it's actually somebody who's unable to control their emotions. Right? And there's different evidences of this in the Quran. For example, in Surah Yusuf, when Yusuf alayhi salam is describing the conflict that he's having with the women of the household, he mentions that if Allah doesn't remove him from the situation, then he might become from Jahilin. Doesn't mean that he's not going to have knowledge. It might mean that he's not able to control his emotions. So this immediately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing that the person who's coming to you is somebody whose emotions are raging. Right? Somebody who might be very angry, somebody who might be, who has all these emotions running through them, this rage, that this is the type of person that's coming to you. It's not somebody who's going to follow the character of the Prophet ﷺ and the advice and the example of the Prophet ﷺ, and they're going to maybe pull you to the side and speak to you gently. This is not the type of person that Allah is describing in this ayah. Alright, the person Allah is describing in this ayah is the one who, again, is unable to control their emotions. And how is it that they are addressing this person, the Ibad al-Rahman? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word khataba, that they, and the word, how it's translated here is that they address them. So this word khataba it comes from the same root as khutbah, right? Like when we think about on Jumu'ah, when the imam or when the khatib is given a khutbah, this is because to give them feeling of speech that is incredibly loud, right? When you're giving khutbah or when you're listening to a khutbah, that speech is supposed to be projected so that everyone can hear. Right? It's supposed to be loud speech. So already by the word choice, because Allah could have used so many different words here, right? He could have used kalam for speaking and things like that. Allah could have used so many different words. But He's using khataba because this is somebody who, again, they're unable to control their emotions, number one. Number two, because of that, they're speaking extremely loud. Right? So already we know what kind of a person this is. Right? What kind of a person is coming to the slaves of Rahman, right, and testing them. And before I even get to the response, there's one other really beautiful thing here in the very beginning of the ayah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says wa'id, right, or wa'idha actually. So when He says idha means when, right? So think about the difference between these two sentences. If somebody says, if I go to such and such place, I will visit so and so. They say that. That's one phrase. You could say, if I go to such and such place, then I'll visit so and so. On the other hand, another way of saying this is you can say, when I go to such and such place, then I'll visit so and so. Right? In the second example, when you use the word when, it means that it's going to happen. Right? There's certainty. You're not doubtful in it anymore. You're certain that you're going to be doing whatever action takes place. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't say, and if the ignorant person addresses you. He says, when the ignorant person addresses you. And this is so important, is because Allah is reminding us that this is something that all of us are going to face at some point or another. Some of us may deal with it more than others, but this is something that all of us are going to eventually deal with. At some point, there's going to be somebody whose emotions are raging, who is speaking to us in a loud and rude and aggressive manner. Maybe they'll do it publicly as well, and all of these things. And that situation will happen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that that's going to happen to this group of people. And so, how do these people respond when they're faced with this kind of a situation? Qalu salama. They respond with peace, right? And this is so important. And this doesn't mean that they literally respond by saying salam, just peace, that's it, that's enough, right? And I've seen this actually, because I've seen this in some gatherings before, people who have read this ayah or people who have heard about this ayah, and immediately when there's a tense situation, they quote this ayah and they say that when the jahil person addresses you, then say salam. So I'm saying salam. Like this is not what Allah is mentioning in the ayah. Allah is not saying that you literally say salam and salam and salam, and because what that's actually going to do is make the situation worse. Because if the person you're talking to knows this ayah, then he's going to know that you're calling him a jahil person. And this is not something that we're supposed to be doing as Muslims to begin with. Right? This is something that, again, it doesn't mean you're literally saying salam, but you're bringing about peace in the situation by whatever means is best for that situation. So it might mean that in that situation you simply hold your tongue. That could be the definition of salam in this situation. That all you do is hold your tongue. You don't respond at all. You don't say anything. And eventually the person will scream and they'll scream and scream, and they'll notice that you're not saying anything back, and then they may calm down. And then you've achieved the goal here, which is you've brought peace into the situation. It might mean that you need to just thank them for whatever it is that they're saying to you, and then move on with your life, and they'll move on with their life. All right, there's different ways to tackle this situation depending on the circumstance, but the objective stays the same. Is that you need to bring about peace in these situations. Right? And Allah is not in this ayah, and this is very, very important. Allah is not addressing the ignorant person in this ayah. He's not telling the ignorant person, don't do this. Right? Allah is talking to the Ibad al-Rahman, this special group, this elite group of people. Allah is talking to them. And He's saying that when these people come to you, you need to learn how to control your anger. You need to learn how to control your emotion. They may not be able to control their emotions, but you need to be able to control your emotions. Right? One of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ, and this is in the 40th hadith of An-Nawawi as well. One of the companions came to the Prophet ﷺ asking for advice. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, give me some advice. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said to him, very, very simple. He said, La taghdab, don't get angry. And the man almost like disappointed in that advice because maybe he was expecting like, some profound verses of the Quran and some really, really big lessons from the Prophet ﷺ. When he's asking for advice, the Prophet ﷺ is telling him very simply, don't get angry. Don't get angry. And the man persists. He asks over and over again.